And welcome back, and it's the higher plus 5 a day for the 17th of February, and let's have a look at the first question. Okay, so what do we have? So we've got a speed distance graph. Now, this could be speed or it could be velocity, depending on what they're trying to measure or what they're doing with the question. But the point is, if it is speed or velocity against time, that means I can calculate distance by using area under the graph. So in other words, it's basically saying, what's the area under the graph? Now I'm going to do something which most people don't use, which I'm going to use the trapezium, which is something that's good to get used to. So I know 70 minus 10, which means this is 60. I know the bottom line is 90, and I know the height from the graph on the side is 6, which means the distance travelled is going to be a half times 6, so half the height plus the sum of the parallel sides, if we know that rhyme from primary school. Either just do it in your head or get your calculator out, and that's going to tell me that's 450, yes it is, 450 meters. First question done. Next question. Okay, these are good questions. I like these questions. So it's a Venn diagram question where it wants you to interpret the Venn diagram. Now you need to be careful because these are numbers. In other words, it's not 12 things. This is just the number 12 here, and this is just the number 4. So you've got to be careful the difference between a frequency and a sort of Venn diagram where I put the things in the Venn diagram. So in other words, let's walk through what I need to do. It's slightly easier. So I want the probability that I pick one of these things at random. So either the number 1, the number 4, the number 5, etc. And that number is not in A or it's not in B, and this or here is important. They don't need to be both, it could be or. So the numbers that are not in A are going to be 8, 11, 10 and 12. And the numbers that are not in B are going to be 12, not in B, 4, and that's it. I can't double count 12, so I'm going to cross that one out. So it means there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers, or 5 separate numbers that are not in A or B. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers overall, so therefore the answer to my question is going to be 5 over 7. Difficult question. A lot of people struggle with the sort of set notation stuff. Right, next question. Solve the inequality. Okay, so obviously it's a quadratic, which means you have to do the quadratic inequality technique. So if I rearrange it, I now have a quadratic. If I factorize it, that gives me x plus 5 x minus 2 is less than 0, which means I have a quadratic where my solutions are minus 5 and 2. Now what does it want? I want all values that are less than, in other words, underneath the axis. So I want all these values here. And those values exist between the values of minus 5 and 2. However, always go back to the original question. The original question is a less than or equal to, so therefore I want to include the minus 5 and 2, because that gives me 0, which solves the equation. Final question. Now this looks like a good question. I thought it was going to say find the area, but it's find the perimeter of the shaded shape. Wow, okay. That's suddenly become very difficult. Now, this is one of these questions you need to work through slowly. You may not be able to see it, so I'm going to zoom in. You can see the scale tells you that this is a circle of radius 2, and of course that's vital to know, isn't it? So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to label it so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to label this A, which is this point here, B, which is this point here, C here, and D here. So in other words, I need to do the length AB plus BC plus CD plus DA. Just helps me highlight to you what I'm doing. Well, AB, it's the easiest bit. It's not the easiest bit, but it's easier to explain, is a quarter of a circle. So it's going to be a quarter of the circumference of a circle, which is 2 pi r, where the radius is 2. So in other words, it's going to be 2 times 2, which is 4, divided by 4. It's going to be pi. So actually that one wasn't too bad, was it? So I've got the curved arc. Then I need to work out BC and AD. Now I can do these in one go. So I'm going to write down that BC and AD equal each other, but I'm going to write them both down anyway, so I don't accidentally forget to do it. And you can see that value there is 4. I know the circle has a radius of 2, so therefore both of these are going to have a length of 2. So I've done that. And then the final part is I need to work out the length DC. Now there's a few things I can do here, but I think probably the easiest thing to do is to consider the triangle OCD and then just do Pythagoras. So the length of D to C is going to be, using Pythagoras, the square root of 4 squared plus 4 squared which is the square root of 32, which is going to be 4 root 2. And again, it's just one of those things you get used to doing, which is how I knew how to do that in my head. Now I'm going to add all these things together. So I've got 4 plus 4 root 2 plus pi. If it says exact value, that will do, but I'm going to get my calculator anyway. So 4 plus 4 root 2 plus pi, do it carefully, it's going to give me 12.79844469, which I'm going to say is approximately equal to 12.8. It didn't say centimetres, does it? So it's technically units. I'm going to write down units. To 3 sig fig. What a nice question to end on. Good little question at the end. Usual thing, any questions below, any mistakes I've made, let me know. I do occasionally make some. And do like and subscribe. Definitely subscribe, please. Make sure these appear in your feed going forward. And I will see you for the next one. Thanks all.